We will be starting shortly with the banking and finance section. The section before this, we will have to move it after lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall begin with the first Industrial Forum on Banking and Finance, the drive towards financing net zero. May I have the pleasure to invite Mr. Anthony Tan Ki Huat, Director of Finance, APPGM/DSG Secretariat, to chair the session for today. Mr. Anthony Tan, please. Following which, I will invite the panelists for this segment to be on stage, which is Puan Zakia Maesa, Chief Sustainability Officer, SME Bank. Mr. Azmi Abdullah, Sustainable Finance Commercial Banking, CIMB Islamic Bank Berhad. Dato Emir Mavani, Director Asia, Takada Asset Management. And Puan Suhaini Binti Harun, Senior Director Corporate Strategy, Malaysia Forest Funds. Please take your place on stage. And Mr. Tan, we must be mindful that we are a little bit under time pressure already. Thank you so much.
Thank you, MC. Dear guests in the front row, organizers, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We're moving towards net zero and we're also moving towards lunch, so we'll be mindful of our time. Each of our speakers will have 5 minutes. Last speaker will have 10 for the first round. So I'd like to invite Dato Emir Mavani, Director Asia, Takada Asset Management, to begin.
Start with them because I'm the last speaker.
Oh, we agree.
Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everyone. Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Hi. I'm going to talk a little bit today about something that's been spoken a lot in the morning just now, about policies, about Bursa, about carbon credits, and a little bit about the incentive is given by various policymakers, the Green Tech Fund just now, MIDA in the morning, and so on. But what I'm going to tackle today is about the projects. How are you actually going to invest in the projects for and using carbon credit to subsidize or to basically support your financial viability on this ESG project? I'm going to use 2 case studies that Takada is involved in, and how are we doing it actually. First, I'm not going to go into detail about the definition of carbon credits already been given just now. I am not going to talk about the context about the policies on carbon credits. It's also been spoken just now. I'm going to talk about the model that we are using actually. And I'm going to use 2 different projects. One is on the palm oil value chain, which I'm very familiar with, okay? The other one is about selling a product to reduce energy consumption of a building actually. That is subsidized model. Now in this context over here, there are various, there's so many palm oil mills in Malaysia, Indonesia, and so on. And we all know today that the palm oil mill is one of the biggest contributor to methane, right? Methane gas, actually. And the idea, you know very well, that 1 ton of methane is equivalent to nearly, in this context, about 28 ton or 30 ton of carbon dioxide emission, actually. So how do we basically encourage palm oil mill owners, especially the independent palm oil mill owners? The large one, they are there in the plantation, they are already gearing up towards this particular policy. But a smaller one, where they are basically tackling the smallholder schemes, they are independent in nature, and for them, viability is more important on how they want to invest in this. Please note that in order just to do a carbon methane capture and flaring alone may cost you 1 to 1.5 million ringgit, depending on the current technology you have in your palm oil mill, actually. Now, for an independent palm oil mill to invest that much of money just to capture and flare that is a lot of investments. So what we are working with them is right now is to work with the APCC contractor on a build, operate, and transfer model. Meaning that instead of the palm oil mill investing in it, we are investing in their projects in terms of capital capex, and we are the one managing it, and we are the one using the carbon credits to finance this partially, actually. So what we do basically, we ask the owner of the palm oil mill, look, you don't have to invest, say 1 million or 1.5 million, you just invest about $500,000 in a fund, for example. The fund will itself give you the returns on your investment. We will then put in another 50% of the capex of the project. We will use the carbon credits to offset these investments, so you don't have to worry about what's your return down there, over there. In the next 10 years, we will return this asset back to you. It is yours to maintain it. All the process of carbon credit compliance, certification, reporting, all is done by Takada in this context, actually. So in this way, we are encouraging these small palm oil owners to go towards their ESG compliance, actually. This is how we do it. Because if we ask them to go on their own, they have to go to a financial institution. The financial institution has to do the entire process over there. It will take a lot of time. And they're not encouraged to do that alone, actually. Right? So this is one model that we are using now in Takada Asset Management. Now the question you may ask me, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions over here, you're going to ask me is, hey, who is buying this carbon credit actually at the end of the day? So behind the scene, we in Takada have our arrangement with major buyers globally. Most of them are energy companies, oil and gas companies globally, who are willing to buy this particular carbon credits based on a SOP and based on the standards that they are imposing to us, actually. So we impose that back to a client on how they're reporting, how they're sustaining it, and how they're going forward to it, actually. So this is a very simple model we're using, and this is very encouraging for the palm oil mill owners. I got 1 more minute to go to. My second model, again, this is a case study. We are using, there is a technology available manufactured in Malaysia, but used globally, by the way. And this particular technology is using a simple film to reduce your energy consumption of your buildings, actually. So instead of using solar power, the solar cells, we use a film. That is manufactured in Kulim High Tech, actually, right? It's under MIDA approval. So we are, but using this particular technology, right, it costs 1.5 times more than conventional glass they use in that particular building, actually. So it doesn't make sense for these big buildings or the hotel owners, whoever it is, to convert. So what we do is that we calculate the carbon credit that's reduced by reduction of energy consumption, I'm aware of it, consumption over there, and we subsidize that particular product to the owner, and the owner subsidizes it to the sale of carbon credit. That's how we are doing it, actually. Two different models. Product subsidization, and this one is CapEx, where we invest in the CapEx over here. I'll stop at the moment because Anthony is saying to me, stop. You see. So forgive me on that. I'll pass back to Anthony. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Dato' Emir. You see, you've put a worm in front of everybody, and everybody wants to know what's happening. Exactly. Yeah. We'll go to Encik Azmi Abdullah. He's from Sustainable Finance, Commercial Banking, CIMB, Islamic Bank, Berhad. Over to you.
Okay. Can I have my slides, please? Take the liberty to walk the stage. Right. Do I do this?
You have injury time until the
That's why I'm worried. I'm already compressed for time. I can't find my slides. Okay, there it is. Okay, how do you go back? Okay, this is, we call this Green Biz Ready proposition. We've launched it back in 2021 amidst COVID. We knew that the seeds had to be planted. It addresses the problem statement of a lot of SMEs when it comes to sustainability. I think lack of resources, whether it's financials, whether it's technical, whether it's knowledge, right? So we knew that, as a bank, we can't do it all, right? So that's why we had this Green Biz Ready proposition. We work with relevant associates to help, SMEs in their sustainability journey. There's a few pillars there, and I think that the main pillar is training and capacity building. And we've got a boutique sustainability consultant there, Impacto, which delivers free of charge. But of course, it's because it's free of charge, it's virtual. But there is some sort of hand-holding for the SMEs to kind of guide that journey. And you see on the far right, tools and templates. That's where I think earlier this morning, Dr. Jessica was saying, okay, you need to disclose based on certain reports. But I think this is where you can combine Impacto, for example, to give you that, some guidance when you start to fill out what kind of things to disclose, right? And of course, without taking actions, you won't be doing much. So that's where we have service providers, the likes of renewable energy and energy service companies, that we can link our customers to take their actions. And of course, at the at the foundation of it all, CIMB, as a bank, we're committed to finance that transition of yours, be it whether CAPEX or OPEX. I'll just touch 3 products here. There's many products out there, but I'll just highlight these 3 here. The middle and the right is from Bank Negara. One is called Low Carbon Transition Facility, the other is High Tech. The difference between these two, low carbon is for the users. So just an example, solar companies, if they are providing the contractors, they'll be given high tech and green. For the companies adopting, it's low carbon transition facility. The commercial parameters are more or less the same. It's about 10 million each, and I think that's a decent size for a lot of SMEs. Tenure is up to 10 years, and most importantly, this is a fixed rate product. And if you're worried about increase of interest rate, and I think we've been hearing this a lot, this is a fixed rate product, and you won't have to worry about any increase in interest rate. And also, this is packaged with guarantee from CGC or SJPP. So it addresses the problem of a lot of SMEs coming to the bank and banks asking them for collateral, right? Additionally, this is packaged with the guarantee already. The first one on the right is newly launched by MGTC. Newly launched, but it is in its 4th version. Now this, whatever that is not covered under low carbon transition and HTG, this should cover it. And there's multiple sectors. Again, producer and user, similar. Energy service company, housing developers, and low carbon mobility infrastructure. The most interesting part about this scheme, GTFS, is that there's a 1.5% rebate from the government. So whatever pricing that you're getting from the bank, when you package it with this, of course, MGTC has to stamp that this is eligible. You get 1.5% rebate, and that's coming out from the government's pocket, MOF, through CGC, and it's given to the customer. Now, this is coming from the bank's pocket. We've launched this just recently, in August. Sustainability-linked financing is very common in the corporate space. So corporates will do hundreds of millions of projects, and then you put a sustainability performance target to it. If they reach, then you get certain rebates. But this is the first time that we're bringing it to the SME space. It's 3 billion in total. Rebates, the one that's coming out from the bank's own pocket, is 0.5%. And it's for any business needs. And we won't leave you in the dark. We'll guide you on how to get to the rebate, because it's not fair that you have a carrot dangling but you don't know how to get there. We'll guide you, and if you follow these steps and for a simple SME setup, likely you will achieve those rebates. And I think my 5 minutes is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Encik Azmi, for giving me 30 seconds. Next, we go to Puan Zakia Mat Esa. She's the Chief Sustainability Officer of SME Bank. Over to you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. First of all, thank you to Control Union and our generous sponsors for having me here. So basically, let me introduce a little bit about SME Bank. Basically, SME Bank is a development financial institution fully owned by the Ministry of Finance, MOF, supervised by the Ministry of Entrepreneur Development and Cooperatives, KUSCOP, and we are regulated by our central bank, Bank Negara Malaysia. Can I have my slide, please?
Yeah, could you have the slides? This is for the next presentation.
So basically, while waiting for the slides, okay. So I've briefly explained about SMA Bank. Basically, our sustainability stand on 3 pillars: responsible banking, responsible business practices, and creating social impact. Okay, this, I have only 2 slides. These slides, I try to answer 3 questions: key drivers towards financing net zero, sustainable action, and how SME Bank assisting the SMEs. So basically, this session is more on financing. When we talk about what we want to do something, we require funding. So actually, funding may come from various sources. One of it is banking, from banks, normal financing. The other one is from the capital market. So based on my slide, there is one rectangle box there. For SME Bank, we have issued Sustainability Sukuk Framework, 2 billion. We have developed 3 billion Sustainability Sukuk program, and so far we have issued 2 billion, and the proceeds go to the customers that comply to ESG compliant. And another one is on the financing. As we know, my colleague Azmeh just mentioned that we have lots of financing products out here, but the only thing is how the SME to tap. Because for SME Bank, our customer, mainly the unserved and underserved, because we are the DFI. So if we were to say that financing is not available, but actually it's ample of the financing, ample of the subsidies, ample of incentive, but the SME, actually they're not ready to tap the fund, because in order for them to tap the fund, they at least already have their carbon emission measured. At least they know what is their transition plan. Then how do SME Bank assist them? So before we give them financing, we need to guide them. We need to educate them. That's why in SME Bank, we have our own subsidiary, Center of Entrepreneur Development and Cooperatives. We provide training for them. We call it SME 360, or it's an end-to-end solution. So we have few phases. For the first phase, they just go and understand what is ESG all about, because we understand our customers' DNA, unserved, underserved, SMEs. Then the next phase, they would be able to know how to measure their emission, and at the end of the day, they would be able to measure their emission and to report their emission and try to plan their decarbonization pathway. Then for the product itself, like mentioned by my fellow speaker, Azmeh, we have lots of products, but for SME Bank, we have 2 ESG linked financing. Actually, it's just a plain vanilla ESG linked financing. We focus on 2 target customers. The first one is young entrepreneurs, and the second one is on the Industrial Building System Promotion Fund. Sorry. So basically, if we were to say that financing is not available, it's there. But how we get ready the SMEs to tap the fund and move forward? I think that's all for me for the first round. Thank you.
Okay, we've saved a total of 120 seconds. Next, we have Puan Suhaini binti Harun, who is the Senior Director, Corporate and Strategy, Malaysian Forest Funds. And she's been given 10 minutes.
Thank you, Anthony. I have a lot of slides, but I'll skip through some of the slides and focus mainly on our new products. Malaysia Forest Fund is a new agency established under NRACC. We were incorporated in June 2021, but only operationalized in July 2022. So our focus is basically creating a funnel for sustainable financing to support conservation of Malaysian forests. Okay? We understand that in Malaysia there's a lot of policies, there's a lot of KPI at the national level looking into, the first promise made by the then Prime Minister Tun Mahathir was to maintain 50% forest cover. At the same time, there is biological biological diversity policy framework announced by the NRECC and the climate targets NDC as per shared by our colleague from MGTC earlier. So in driving this agenda, the key question is where the financing can comes in for forestry sector specifics. And under the UNFCCC, there's an instrument called REDD+, focusing on emission reduction from forestry sector, as well as emission removal. These instruments are developed for developing countries, ultimately create an opportunity to increase financing to support this effort through either market and non-market instrument. So MFF is basically mandated to implement the first two products, Forest Conservation Certificate, and the second one is Forest Carbon Offset. The first one is non-market instrument, which means that if you are a company, I see a lot of companies in Malaysia now looking into channeling funding to support conservation effort. But the question is, what kind of recognition, what kind of report card that we can basically be validated and be supported, whether these intervention really addressing the key pain, key challenges in the forestry sector. And the second instrument involving market transaction, which will involve exchange of credit, carbon credit from forestry sector, and FCO intends to verify and certify carbon projects in Malaysian forests. So MFF is developed as company limited by guarantee, which means that we are not a commercially driven entity. And all the financing that is going to be secured through these two instruments will be channeled to the state governments to implement the conservation effort. Okay, the first instrument is Forest Conservation Certificate. We had rigorously since July last year go down to the state level, visiting the forestry department and try to understand what are the key challenges in managing their forests. And what we was made to understand is the support required is basically the whole spectrum of forest management. So I see now companies, when they go to the forest managers, they say, I want to support planting trees. But we must understand that when we talk about the spectrum of management, it can go down to even conducting land demarcation for new forests, help them to develop forest management plan. And in fact, some of them require restoration activity, not beyond tree planting, re-wetting of the wetland, forests, or treatment of soil, so that the plantation, whatever planting activities implemented afterwards are more effective. So how FCC works, basically, we will match donors to the sites and the proponent sites, and the donors will, upon execution of the conservation agreement, can then pay the donation through MFF. Once payment is made, they are entitled to up to 10% tax deduction of aggregate income. So the idea of this tax incentives is basically to promote, to soft launch and promote the participation of private sector, supporting conservation effort. The money will be disbursed based on progress, and proponent will have to deliver their FCC activity. And I think the key element here is about verification by third party. So we are inviting CBs to support our system in FCC. We'll be conducting town hall for FCC by end of November, early December. We will extend invitation to all participants here. And basically, FCC will be issued upon registration. At the same, FCC will also be issued upon progress. So this framework allow corporates to basically validate when they channel their financing to forestry sector. At the end of the day, what they get, they can also confirm the core benefits and their contribution in terms of impact or output in terms of SDG contribution or an ESG frame under the ESG framework. So maybe to elaborate further, These are some of the examples based on our visits to the states, to the forests at the states. The first one is gazettement of new forests. This is Sungai Besi Tambahan, a new forest announced to be gazetted as forest reserve in 2019. But as to date, there's no land physical boundaries has been basically demarcated on the ground. They have yet to develop a forest management plan. And this is an ex-mining site. So if you were to plant trees here, the tree will not survive. So the first thing first that you need to do is to do a topsoil treatment. Only then you can do tree planting. Okay. The second site, I'm not going all the sites, and the second site is quite interesting in the sense that Waterban was constructed in the middle of mangrove forest. So what happened? There's a waterlock. So when waterlock happened, the water doesn't actually flow within the mangrove. So you see the cleared area is basically trees are dying because of the waterlock. The right intervention here is basically to install culvert so that water can we can re-wet the mangrove forest and subsequently tree planting. So I believe when the information asymmetry between businesses when they want to come and support forests on the same when the forest managers doesn't really talk business language. MFF is here is basically to connect the two. Yeah. So we will have to profile the sites, and if these sites are appropriate for the FCC, we will then match the funder with the specific site. Of course, I acknowledge that some companies might have specific values that want to highlight. For example, they wanted to support tiger or they wanted to support elephant. So we hope to basically map the core benefits from the specific forest, and then company can select from which sites that is suitable to your values. Okay. The second instrument is FCO. This is still under development. We are now under the feasibility study. We are working with Control Union on this effort, and we hope to receive the first draft of the FCO standards, standard by first half next year. So FCO basically, like I mentioned earlier, it's certified carbon credit projects domestically. And we hope to basically learn from the best practices from the other countries. In the world, there's 27 national-based crediting systems that are implemented to support the carbon pricing instrument for the specific country. So we hope FCO will be the one of the standards that can be used for offset generations in Malaysia. So understanding this, I'm finishing, understanding the complexity of FCC, so we do a lot of workshops and training, hands-on training. So, and the key challenge that we observe if there is still limited capacity and access toward expertise. So one side we're talking about carbon expert, and the other side we talk about forestry expert. And these two knowledge doesn't necessarily come together. So it's limited technical capacity and expertise basically hinders some, it may impede some of the projects. Based on our visit to the States, most of the sites that are graded are generally small, less than 500 hectares. So what we do is basically to get a scalable project, maybe we need to consolidate some of the sites to achieve economic of scales. And of course, when we talk about the cost for intervention, based on the experience that, based on some of the story that I shared earlier, the cost for intervention really depends on the drivers of deforestation of that specific forest. So we cannot say the cost intervention is $5 per ton CO2. We cannot say that. Really, we need to understand what's the cost on sites. So understanding this complexity, moving forward in 2024, we will be launching our FCC, fully operationalized in 2024, and we hope to enhance private sector partnership in implementing FCC. We will also announce our Dana Pembangunan Kebun Hutan, the grant, special grant to basically support the development of carbon project in Malaysia and subsequently finalize the FCO study. As per announced by the Prime Minister in Budget 2024, there will be sukuk support, sukuk biodiversity be introduced to the market, and we hope to contribute for this development of this sukuk. I think that's all for me, Anthony.
Thank you very much. I was in Sri Lanka in early October, and it was for the Asia Pacific Forum on Environment. And they were talking about 3 areas of concern. One of it is biodiversity loss. Secondly, on climate change. And thirdly, on all forms of pollution. And of course, Malaysia, we are getting the side effects of what's happening in other countries which shall not be named. Although I think most of the companies there are actually owned by Malaysia and Singapore. So that's for another forum. We'll go through a round of quick fire, 2 minutes. Dato' Emir, what is the fundamental difference between the Clean Development Mechanism or CDM under the now defunct Kyoto Protocol with carbon credit generation strategy championed by Takada?
Thanks, Anthony. First, yes, the CDM is still valid in many of the application for offsetting your carbon or calculating your carbon credits, right? Remember, we are mainly driven by what the carbon credit buyers want, actually. So they will decide on how we do the calculation in the context of our projects. And many of them still recognizes a CDM methodology, calculate or offset your carbon credit mechanism. So this is the answer to that.
All right. Thank you very much. Next. See, I decided not to print, so my tab suddenly went off. Okay, Encik Amir. Sustainability-linked financing or SLF for SMEs with an allocation of 3 billion ringgit, which is quite a large sum. How much funding can an SME expect to receive if they are successful in their application?
Okay, thanks, Anthony. I think the short answer to that is the whole 3 billion is available now because we've got the budget approved for it before we launch, of course. But for SMEs, I would imagine, we didn't put a cap to it, but I would imagine that for a lot of SMEs, I think if we do the 10 million kind of size, I think it will be quite decent. It doesn't mean that it cannot go beyond. And that second category, I would imagine about 10 to 30 million. And the part that I wanted to highlight here is that the SLF, the rebate, can actually be tagged to a financing that is not even green related. So I think the misconception is always like, oh, if I finance my solar, okay, that's where the rebate is. And usually that's a smaller ticket item, right? But for SLF, you can actually put it on your property financing. If you have a warehouse, if you have a factory, and that's a bigger ticket financing item. And you can actually put the rebate there. But of course, where it's linked is because as a company, you'd have a certain sustainability performance target. And if you do reach those targets, you'll be given the rebates on that bigger ticket item financing. But of course, for you to reach those targets, for example, reduction of carbon emission, that's where the activities or the action needs to take place, whether you're adopting renewable energy or looking at energy efficiency solutions. So just like to highlight that, it's not purely related to green financing, it can also be on your other types of financing.
That's good to know. Puan Zakia, what are the key challenges in SME Bank's sustainability journey, given that SMEs have limited funding available to choose from the numerous ESG frameworks currently available and what was shown earlier?
Thank you, Anthony. Basically, I speak on behalf of my customer. As I mentioned earlier, we are DFI. Our customer mainly SMEs, and they are the unserved and underserved. So basically, if we were to say that funding is not enough, funding is there. But when Bank Negara Malaysia, the central bank launched Low Carbon Transition Fund, it's a fund whereby all the FI can tap for our customer. So basically, when we go to our customer, the challenge is that they're not ready for the fund. As I mentioned earlier, in order for them to tap the fund, there are requirements to it, one. And number two, once they already obtain the fund, we need to monitor their transition journey. What are the reduction has been done? What are the energy that they have improvised and whatnot? So the challenges is actually on first people. People means the customer, whether they understand it or not. And another one is actually our internal staff as well. So we have to transition, not only the customer, we need to train our staff for them to understand and guide the customer towards this decarbonization journey. So that is the first challenges. The second challenges is on the policy and process. Once we introduce a new thing, we need to have the policy and the process, the procedure in place. So basically for SME Bank, we have come up with all the policy, but about the SMEs. So they don't even know head or tail of this ESG, how could they come up with the policy and procedure? The third one is on the data. So for us to know where we are, we need to have the data. Then only we can measure, we can quantify, and we can come up with the necessary plan. And because of that, our customer, first, they really need to understand what data they need to collect, what data they need to measure and track, and the data they have to share with us. Because we understand that SME Bank, we aim to be net zero by 2050. But again, without data from our customer, how could we complete our Scope 3 emission? So these are the key challenges that we have been facing. I think that is not our only challenges. I think all of us here would be agree that data, the understanding of the ESG and the policy need to be in place in order for us to go in this decarbonization journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Puan Sohaini, how does MFF ensure that the REDD Plus finance framework avoids double counting of our nationally determined contributions or NDCs to the UNFCCC?
Thank you, Anthony, for the question. Actually, this is a layered question. So to answer you, maybe I can give the maybe a brief about the fundamental of carbon credit project generated from the forestry sector. So when we talk about REDD, under the UNFCCC, it's a result-based payment. So as a nation, how do you perform? And this performance will then be reported under the BUR or the upcoming BTR. And then based on the performance, we would be able to basically pledge for international financing from the Annex 1 country. So the second approach, when we talk about REDD mechanisms under the voluntary market, basically it allows crediting be done at the site-specific area. And it's really key, like what was shared by Dr. Weni earlier, carbon project must be additional. And the additionality is defined that it must not required by the law, and it financially additional, which means that it will not happen without the finance support from the credits. So based from these two fundamental understanding, we must understand that what is going to be developed under the RFF Malaysian instrument should be additional to what is already under the BAU scenario, only then it is eligible for crediting. But nevertheless, FCO is still under development. We hope to for the FCO to really address this gap, and we are also trying to see how the implementation of FCO aligned to the Article 6 under the Paris Agreements. Under the Article 6, it allows country to basically support other country to develop emission reduction projects, and the country can then transfer the outcome of these projects to the funder country. But all this still under negotiation. We are waiting for COP28 to discuss about it.
Right, thank you. We have 21 minutes and 45 seconds for questions from the floor. Please introduce yourself and to whom your question is being addressed to.
Good morning. My name is Li Ling from Forest Solution with Industrial Tree Plantation Project based in Sabah. My question addressed to any of the panel speaker here. Malaysia is committed to maintain 50% of the landmass under forest cover. And I believe that one of the ways to achieve that is to encourage industrial tree plantation. Okay, this would alleviate pressure on the natural forest industry, meet the global wood demand, also observe the straight land use plan as developed by the country. And however, I may be wrong. In the meantime, in the meantime of doing all this, right, it can also add up to the GDP of the country and also develop, stimulate carbon trading. I may be wrong, but this morning all I heard is all incentive or sustainable funding for high-tech green businesses. So I would like to check if there's any banking or financing sector that would consider this low-tech industrial tree funding for industrial tree planting, and that for the benefit of the audience here, industrial tree planting is capital intensive, does not have income for the first 15 years. When it starts to have income, the margin is very narrow. So from our business experience, we have approached banks, local government, international, private, as well as institutional. It's always been a challenge. It's not as sexy as high-tech business. So over to you. Thank you.
Who would like to take the...
I try to address your question. I believe in Malaysia, under the Malaysian Timber Board, there's a subsidy to Malaysian Timber Board provide loan for forest plantation. So, but I'm not quite sure whether this loan are still available. You maybe has been fully committed. Not available? No longer available. Yeah. So, interestingly, when we talk about carbon projects, there's new interest from funders looking into setting up timber business plus carbon project as a hybrid model, where it allows companies to basically, while planting the forest, at the same time generating carbon credits from the project. But as it is now, we understand that whatever is meant for harvesting will need to be calculated as not the removal stops within the forest. So there's an element of a bit of balancing how much that you can maintain for carbon credit generation and how much you can maintain for timber generation. I can give a specific example in Australia. The domestic crediting system in Australia allows crediting from plantation forests, so long that fits the element of permanency. Some of the area fit the elements of permanency and emission reduction during the harvesting process. So I think this is maybe one of the way of looking at to fund to access new financing in plantation. But well, I recommend that you check again with MTIB whether that timber plantation is still there.
Thank you. Next question, yeah. Introduce yourself and make your question direct to the point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe Puan Suhaini, my name is Afiq, I'm from Shell. Very interested in the foreign carbon offset study or the embarkation that you guys are working on. Maybe can I understand a bit more the value driver? Because one of the things I'm curious about is you say domestic offset. Is it for domestic offset, or do you still have thoughts about, international players also being able to
Of course, as a start, we look into a domestic scheme at this point of time. But if you understand why it was actually mooted initially to the cabinet, the creation of RFF, because we understand that the international credits have very stringent requirements. For example, if you go for afforestation projects, the sites must be not deforested within 10 years prior to the project. And if you profile some of the area that has been cleared for forests, some of this may be very recent, less than 7 years, less than 8 years. So if we were to wait until 10 years, action is delayed, while the sites has been degraded for many things. And this site may be under pressure for permanent conversion for agriculture, for instance. So the reason why we look into the possibility having a domestic crediting system so that this system allow us to take the national circumstances. I would like to give an example for Thailand. What was shared by Dr. Winnie earlier, RE is no longer additional under the VERA instrument. But in Thailand, RE is still additional because RE is still very costly for Thailand, because they're still a development country. I think we should also take that into consideration. But to answer you whether it's going to be an international acceptance towards these standards, we are also looking into, like I mentioned earlier, reviewing and maybe exploring affiliation with the international standards, so that we might have a tiered level scheme that if they are looking into like international recognized instrument, then we can maybe affiliate with the readily established standard. But at the same, we wanted to reduce the transaction costs by having domestic standards. So it allows the creation of projects take into domestic circumstances, at the same try to reduce the transaction costs for carbon credit project.
Puan Suhaini, probably you've got a few potential customers lining up. Okay, ladies first.
Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Lila from Cargill. So smallholders, farmers, they contribute the least to climate change, but they will receive the brunt of the impact of climate change. Let's just take palm, for example. So what financing mechanisms do we have for smallholders to be climate resilient?
For smallholders.
I will try to answer a project we are undertaking now for the smallholders. Okay, it's just a case study, by the way. So we're working with a smallholders association, not in Malaysia, but a different country, where we're looking at the entire value chain to the circular economy, actually, right? Where we work with the smallholders and we work on where they're selling their produce to mid-level processors, and we're looking at the circular economy and use the carbon credit gain to subsidize the process of the smallholders' income over there. So we are doing that at the moment, actually. Right? But it requires a lot of effort from various government bodies to encourage this particular thing to happen. So I can answer that. Yeah, right.
Okay, we have time for one last question.
Hi, very good afternoon, everyone. To distinguished panelists and all the ladies and gentlemen out there. So I have a specific question for you, Mr. Amir Mawani.
Sorry, your name, please?
I'm Sadanand Tiwari. I'm from EKI Energy Services Limited, India. So you mentioned that, that you guys are also investing into the projects, right? And you have offset buyers, you sell credits to them. How are you hedging that price risk? Because this market is quite volatile, considering the current turmoil that is going on in the carbon market. How do you hedge your risk on the getting back the investment for your company as well as for the project owner? And I'm sorry if I can ask just one more question regarding, because I'm quite curious to understand this, that how is the acceptance of carbon credits from palm oil project? because in the European countries there has been some backlash that we have heard from the projects, that the carbon credits from palm oil projects. What's your take on that? Thank you.
I will try to answer the first one first. You're very right. It's very volatile when we say about carbon credit and the volunteer market and the compliance market and so on. So it's very important because we are working with the buyers of these carbon credits, right? And we know exactly what they want. We want to avoid greenwashing, number one. Number two is double accounting, actually. This is very, very crucial in the international market, and there must be very clear context of additionality. Now, in order to go through all these things, most of these clients of ours will ask for verification and validation to be done. Verification and validation is not a cheap process. It can cost you right up to $100,000 if you look at the entire project. Now, it's not many companies or many organizations wants to go through that pain process, actually. So when we work with a client, we know exactly what the ROI is going to be. We, in fact, pay for the verification and validation, actually. So the client do not have a problem in that process to do. Secondly, we are working now the moment, with an insurance company to ensure the performance of the processes, number one, and to also try to hedge the risk of carbon credit fluctuation and pricing. So in that way, that we can, in a way, reduce our risk and assurance of income, as well as the client will get what he wants to do there, actually. So I hope I answered those two questions.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our session. It is now 2 minutes and 3 seconds left. So can I invite you to please thank the panelists? And I'll hand over to the MC.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony Tan Ki Kwat, for moderating this session today. And as a gesture of appreciation for the presentation, may I have the pleasure to invite Mr. Supun yet again. You'll have lost a lot of weight by the end of today because you're going up and down and up and down and up and down to present some tokens for our honored speakers. Thank you very much for attending today. Ms. Oriane also, thank you. Shall we very quickly take a group photo? Snap, snap away. Everybody smile. All right, a little bit more to the center. The photographer is asking, yep, to balance it out. There we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Click. Click, 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 click. Okay, thank you. I think we got 4 nice shots in there. Oh, one more, Mr. Supun wants one more with a thumbs up. Baru jadi thumbs up. Kalau tak sah lah. Thank you to our panelists. Puan Suhaini, though, I will ask you to stay on stage. Yes, please. We would like to invite Datuk Haji Jeffrey Abdul Rashid, CEO of Malaysia's Forest Fund. And of course, again, okay, Encik Supun, he didn't leave the stage, thankfully, to join us for this announcement. Control Union is proud to announce that it has been awarded a significant contract by the Malaysia Forest Fund to connect feasibility studies on forest carbon offset protocol for Malaysia. The Malaysia Forest Fund, a key stakeholder in the nation's efforts to combat climate change and promote sustainable forestry practices, has entrusted Control Union with the critical task of designing a robust and internationally recognized carbon offset protocol specific to Malaysia's diverse and vital forest ecosystems. This exciting collaboration reflects Control Union's commitment to the environmental preservation and its expertise in creating innovative solutions to address climate change and support sustainably forestry. Developing a tailored carbon offset protocol will play a pivotal role in enhancing Malaysia's position in the global stage as it addresses climate change and endeavors to achieve its sustainable goals. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is now finally time for me to announce lunchtime. It's recess, and as headmaster today, I shall give you 40 minutes to please enjoy some grub, some good Malaysian food. I'm not quite sure what is out there, but I'm sure the hotel has provided something wonderful. So please make your way outside, enjoy a delicious lunch, and please be back here within 40 minutes.